So, just how easy is it to grow a passion fruit vine? I wanted to talk about this because I feel like sometimes it's easy to get stuck in your own head and kind of put things off that shouldn't be that hard. And my approach to gardening is normally chuck it in the ground and see how it goes. Now, my success is going to vary from your success because you could be anywhere in the world. I'm in northern New South Wales, but I want to show you basically the passion fruits I've put in my garden and a couple that have basically cropped up, obviously from a previous owner. We've only been here for a year, and give you an idea of just how easy they are to grow and how little care I've taken with these to come up with some pretty decent results if you ask me. So let's go have a look at the passion fruit I'm growing, keeping in mind I'm not yet at the fruiting stage. This is early stages, but it'll give you an idea of where you could be in say 6 months. So directly behind me is this Panama red passion fruit. I don't think it's grafted because I did, after seeing quite a lot of advice online, basically come to the conclusion that grafted probably wasn't the best choice. There's lots of reasons for that. I'll go on about that a little bit later. And the reason I picked the Panama red is because it was just a little bit different than what I thought I had planted elsewhere in the garden. It's along this piece of fence here. So as you can see, it is in a very, very hot spot. It gets sun all day. Basically, it could not be in a hotter spot at all. It is supported by the existing fence, which is a win for me because it means I didn't need to add any supports for it. And it has gone really, really well. As you can probably see here, it is looking like it's a little bit moisture stressed. We've had quite a few hot weeks. However, it is still going really well. Underneath it here, I've also got some I think sugarcane mulch. Very, very simple. I actually planted it, totally forgot about it for about 2 weeks, and it was just sitting in the soil there, very, very hot, very, very exposed, and this thing has gone very, very well. So that gives you a bit of an idea of kind of the worst case scenario if you just pick a pretty hot spot, put one of these in the ground, obviously with some sort of support or trellis, and I think you can probably expect it to go quite well. These are considered a pest in some areas, and certain varieties are more of a problem than others, which gives you an idea of how hardy they are. And for me, here in Australia, where it's been quite dry, obviously that is actually somewhat of a winner because something that grows like a weed is probably going to perform quite well for me. Let's go and have a look at the one that's probably my most precious passion fruit. So the last passion fruit we looked at, funnily enough, was a Panama red, and this is the same. I thought I bought different ones, but clearly not. This one here was the passion fruit that I put in as really my kind of most serious attempt at growing a passion fruit. It's along this fence here, which is along our driveway. It's going to be one that I can see year round. Obviously, it's going to be very, very easy if I get some fruit to come out and pick it, and it's going to hopefully stretch along the fence here. So about, let's say 5 meters of fence along here, and then even perhaps down the fence a good 3 meters before we get down to the raspberry, which is probably going to compete with it for a little bit of that fence space. However, as you can see here, I put in a garden bed for it. I built it up with a quality soil, unlike the other passion fruit I just showed you, which was just straight in the ground. This has some much higher quality soil here from a soil delivery I got. I have actually watered this a little bit more, and to be honest, while this is looking a little bit healthier, I'm just going to put that down to the fact this one has been in the ground for significantly longer, probably an extra month compared to the one I just showed you. And as a result, I would probably say that one down there that I've totally neglected is going better than this Panama red. So both Panama reds, bit of a mistake on my part there. And yeah, you can get an idea. One thing working against this particular passion fruit is at this point in time, this tree is covered in leaves, and there is quite a bit of shade here. It's going to lose its leaves shortly. We're heading into autumn, and this will be much, much sunnier. And so I'm interested to see how it goes. One of the other reasons I actually put this vine here is because in the grass over here, there's actually some very, very small little green frogs. And what I actually wanted to do was to try and get a bit of a better habitat for them along the fence line here, make it a little bit more protected so they've got a nicer habitat as well. And that was a big decision-making process in thinking about putting the passion fruit here as something that is evergreen rather than going with something that's going to lose its leaves and then leave it a much more denuded area of the garden. The next couple of passion fruits are a little bit more interesting because some of them have basically propped up on the property that I had nothing to do with, and some of them I put in with the idea of getting some arches in, and that project's been put on hold, but I thought we'd go and have a look at them and see how they've survived in one of the harsher areas of the garden. Okay, so this is a little bit of an unusual one, very, very unusual for a passion fruit, in fact. And the reason for that is because this is not a passion fruit. I'd originally planted a passion fruit down in here, and to be honest, I am not even sure what this is. I'm about 99% sure that it is not a passion fruit, even though there are some striking similarities. And maybe I'll get some photos of this and put it in a plant identifier app and just see what it comes back as, because I have a feeling it's just some kind of vine that has grown out of the spot that I put the passion fruit in originally, which is why there's this piece of netting here. I did have some issues with the wallabies eating them out in this part of the garden, and as a result, I did have to get some protection in place. So not to say that these aren't going to have any pest issues at all, but it's something worth considering. Okay, this is a little bit more of a success story. As you can see here, again, I have got some protection for this. Once it grows outside of this little piece of fencing or a little piece of wire protection, or tree guard, whatever you want to call it, it is going to be susceptible to the wallabies, but as long as the main stem's pretty protected, I'm kind of happy with that. And as you can see here, we've got it growing quite healthily. It's a very, very dry part of the garden here. This is totally on its own, and I just basically put them in and let them go. They have not been watered, nothing. They have survived, but I certainly wouldn't say they've thrived, because these have been in longer than the other vine or both of those vines I've shown you, and they've grown fairly slowly. The idea here was to get some arches in and have basically a covered walkway, archway, and have them growing over it and just be able to, pick the fruit through the archway. A great idea, keeping in mind that spiders are quite an issue here, so whether they would infest that kind of setup, it's a good question, but it's going pretty well. Now, one thing I will say about this, and you're probably going to laugh at this because I did say I'd made an effort to get different passion fruits. This is another Panama Red passion fruit. A little bit embarrassing, and this is a grafted one as well. And so these ones I put in right at the start before I'd done a bit more research. And as a result, I probably didn't do the smartest thing on this one. Okay, a similar story with this vine here, this passion fruit vine. It is kind of intertwined around a little bit of, it's like a bamboo-y vine. Not 100% sure what that is, but it's going okay. We're doing all right here. I can't see where I put basically the tag for this to see what kind of passion fruit it is, but knowing my current level of luck, it's probably a Panama Red. We'll find out when it flowers, but for the moment, it's growing here quite well. Again, I've just let it be. It could become the part of an arch at some point in the future. Who knows? We can hope. And yeah, the fact that it's still alive with absolutely no maintenance or care of any kind. The soil here is pretty rocky, directly under gum trees as well. So if you're considering that as one of your challenges, so that's a eucalypt, they still seem to do okay. Maybe not amazingly, but okay. So this plant here actually was, I would say, already growing on the property. And when we bought, someone had come through and done a really good job of clearing out a lot of the excess bush and weeds and things like that. However, they'd been pretty indiscriminate and they'd taken out obviously a lot of stuff that had been planted at the same time, which is pretty exciting for us because most of it's regrowing now and we're getting to see what was here before. This little, I assume passion fruit, I'm pretty sure it is a passion fruit, popped up and it was getting eaten something awful by the wallabies. Every time it'd get some leaves, it'd get eaten back. It's never really fully recovered. Obviously, being in a protected little bit of fencing has helped. However, it hasn't really gone that well. And one of the problems is we're probably gonna have to put in a water tank behind me here, and this is going to be basically destroyed in the process. Whether I can transplant it is an interesting question, and also whether it is a grafted passion fruit and whether I'd want to is another big question. So we'll see on that one, but as you can already see, this is the 5th passion fruit that I've shown you so far, and if I lose one, it's not a big problem. Okay, so in this section of the garden, we've basically got a passion fruit growing out of the ground. It seems to be going really well. I am assuming, again, that this is a proper passion fruit and it's not some awful demonic grafted base that has grown back, obviously after being cleared, as I've just previously mentioned. And it's growing up this little section here. This is a no longer used water heater. I wouldn't have thought there'd actually be that much moisture in the ground here, but apparently there is. It's going quite well. There is a big python that lives around here. So while I'm kind of enjoying seeing this growing, I'm not really paying that much attention to it. And I probably will need to make sure it doesn't overtake this little dwelling here. But for the moment, because we're not using it, it's not a big drama. And I guess what I could do is bring in some trellis, some support, and get it to grow in a way that would be a little bit more beneficial. But this is at the very, very low end of the priority of things to do. So just to give you another idea, these things growing like crazy, you can also see why these are considered a weed. Now, I went and bought a banana passion fruit and I was quite excited by the idea. Now, there were two issues that I came up with that choice. Number one, when I kind of looked into what people said as far as reviewing the quality of the fruit off the banana passion fruit, not great. A lot of people said they weren't very good. I do like the really kind of, bitey, quite tart passion fruit, and that wasn't really ticking any boxes. The bigger issue was the simple fact that basically they're quite a bad weed. Now, I think that does hold true for all of the passion fruits. However, for me, that one in particular had a particularly bad reputation. I didn't want to have to deal with it. I accidentally, not really, allowed it to die by just leaving it out and not watering it and not planting it. And I'm pretty happy with that choice. I am keeping an eye on these because they could go out of control, but for the moment, we're doing okay, I reckon. The next one's probably the most out of control and will be the hardest to trim back if I keep letting it go to an extent. But again, it's another quite interesting example of just a passion fruit jumping up out of nowhere. Okay, so you're not going to see me climbing into all of that mess over there simply because, as I've already said, this is kind of the snake region of the property, the python region, I should say. We've also seen some browns and some black snakes, and that's a little bit more of a worry. Python, a little bit less of a worry, but I'm not going to jump in there. But you can see here, growing through this whole section here and now starting to go up the gum tree, is another passion fruit, which is pretty cool to see. Again, I'm just letting it go because I'm quite interested to see what happens here. It doesn't have any support apart from the tree itself. I guess thinking about it now, I could just come along and chop it off at the base if it becomes a bit of an issue, but I'm not that concerned. And in a way, something that basically helps cover this up and will hopefully also kind of help it mulch down a little bit faster by providing a little bit of shade and a bit of moisture retention. That's not a bad thing either because bushfires are always a concern, but we're just going to see how we go on this one. The big thing with these plants which have already been here and that are now growing back after obviously being cleared back is I don't know whether they're going to fruit. I don't know what kind of fruit's going to come off them. I don't know really if they are the grafted base of the original plant and I'm just going to get rubbish. There's a lot of questions to be answered, but I'm kind of looking forward to that because I've got down in the main garden the two along the fence, which should be quite predictable, and then all of these options up here that really are getting no love at all. It'll be cool if they succeed, and if they don't, I'm not going to cry any tears. Now, as far as kind of the thoughts around the passion fruit, they do need, from what I've read, a pretty decent support system because they can get quite heavy. They are something that is a bit more of a long-term kind of growing exercise. They're not like a seasonal thing. And yeah, I definitely think I will stick to, in future purchases, buying the plants that aren't grafted because the grafted base can be really, really invasive and can be almost impossible to get out from a lot of the people I've seen talking about it online. And also, kind of the other side of that is people have found they've got the grafted passion fruit, they thought they were doing well, but as it turns out, they've ended up with a vine that doesn't really fruit passion fruits. It's the the not very good grafted base. So all their hard work has gone to nothing, which would be really, really disappointing. So I'm sticking to the non-grafted varieties for now after making some mistakes. And yeah, I'll be doing an update. Basically the timeline on how long these have been growing for. Obviously these are regrowing from nothing. Probably 9 months since we moved into the property, maybe a little bit longer now, maybe a year. We're getting close to a year. And those ones up the top there, the 3 that I planted, one of which has died, they've been in for a good 6 or 7 months, not doing that crash hot. The one that's my kind of more special one down on the driveway, probably 5 months. And then the other one right down the front that I showed you at the very beginning, that's probably only been in for 2 or 3 months max. So just to give you a bit of an idea of what's going on. I'm not going to talk about caring for them because really I haven't had to do anything. The only thing I have done is the ones on the fence. I've kind of gone along every now and then and just pushed one of the tendrils in against the fence to train it along the fence a bit more the way I want. And that's been pretty much the extent of what I've done. So super, super easy. I haven't had any fruit this year because I just haven't had them long enough. I'm hoping next year that I'll get fruit. And not in my experience, but my parents live somewhat nearby. My mum put in a passion fruit vine 2 years ago. And at this time at Christmas, she had probably hundreds of passion fruit. And she was rubbing it in a little bit by giving them to us every single time we went over and saying, take some more, where I really would like to grow my own. So we'll see how we go on that one. No snakes so far, so we're doing well. If you've got any questions, let me know down in the comments. If you've got any advice, let me know because I'm always looking for ways to improve what I'm doing and I'm quite interested in that. And certainly if you can identify any of these passion fruit vines or maybe I've misidentified them, let me know.